Welcome to Elevating La Cultura podcast, a space where I talk with Latinas who are passionate about what they do and are willing to share their passion with others to change the narrative, especially for the next generation. Each season is centered around different topics, but all with the Latina perspective. This is season 4, focused on artists and creators. So vámonos, and let's get into it. My next guest is my friend Sandra. We are legit friends that live not too far from each other. We've taken our relationship from social media to real life to actually collaborating on a project last year and designing a 2022 calendar, which is why I'm so proud to have her on the podcast to share her story as a designer. She's such an amazing person, so I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hola, I am super excited to introduce the next guest, Sandra, my friend. We are like friends. We have known each other for a few years now. I think we met on Instagram and have built a relationship through community, through social media, and we even collaborated on a project recently, which I'm sure we'll get into. But for now, I'm going to let you, Sandra, introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you for having me tonight. I'm so excited to be here. You are definitely one of my great friends, and yeah, I'm just excited. um, my name is, like I said, Sandra, and I am the owner and creator of Papelitos Lindos, which is a Latina-owned stationery company. And my mission is to create Latinx representation through stationery, one papelito at a time. So anything from like greeting cards to notepads to notebooks. That's the goal, is to grow more into like the office stationery department. But definitely I have a lot of greeting cards that represent me and my cultura and my community. And I established my company in 2017. So yeah, here I am now and still doing it. A little background is I'm from Chicagoland area, so south side of Chicago, born and raised. Spent a lot of time in Little Village in Pilsen growing up, so in between, 3 different neighborhoods of Chicago, which has been really awesome. Um, and yeah, I went to school on the South Side as well. I studied sociology and social work at Northeastern University. I didn't know what I was going to do with that degree, but it took me down the teaching route, and I really love teaching. I was a Spanish teacher for about 3 years, and then in 2019, I lost my job, and that's when I decided to take Papelitos Lindos on full time and see where it goes. And um, yeah, that's a really short summary of how I got here today to doing this full time, but it's been a really, really, really adventurous journey for me.
I'm always encouraged when people say, like, I went to school and didn't know what I was going to do. Because at that age, and I want this to be an encouragement for like the next generation, at that age, there is so much pressure, especially as like first gen, second gen kids, to go to college and to do the whole degree track. And um, that piece of paper is like so important for like the family. And when you are like in your teens, there's like that's a lot of pressure, and we don't always know what we want to do, and that's okay. I think nobody told me that it was okay to not know or to change my mind when I went to school. um, so I hope this is an encouragement for anyone who's listening, that it's okay to not know. It's okay to change. It's okay to go to school for one thing and then graduate and do something completely different, which is what I'm doing. So yeah, I think we connected on the topic of you being a Spanish teacher because if I remember correctly, I was doing a live on Instagram and you hopped on, and I was talking about how I was looking for other resources for my kids to speak Spanish, and you were like throwing out resources, and I was like, okay. I didn't realize that you have that background, because social media like can be so narrow. Like you can feel like you know somebody because you follow them and you like all that the things that they're putting out there. But that's what I liked about doing my lives. Like I got to form connections with my followers and get to know them on a deeper level. And it was after that I was like, "Hey, we should hang out sometime. Like let's go get coffee." I think we started talking through Instagram about coffee shops in the area. And I just want to give, like, sometimes social media is so hard and I get so frustrated with it. But I think if you're intentional about being social on social media, especially over the past few years, like that we have not been out and about, like you can really form great relationships virtually and online and then make them in person um, later
And then
on.
make projects and do podcasts and, do things together and come over and hang out with your family and your dog.
Yes, exactly. I mean, girl, you know my kids, you know my
Yeah.
dog, you know the whole family,
I
which
do.
is
I do.
awesome. Um, I want to go a little deeper on the transition from when you were working in a school and kind of doing graphic design like on the side to where you're at now. I think a lot of times um, we don't necessarily reflect or talk about the transition period because like we're trying to figure it out when we're in it, and then once we get out of that transition period we're just like go 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 go. And so with this podcast I always like to encourage people and like bring reality to the conversation. So maybe you can walk us through a little bit about like how that looked for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a first gen graduate too, so like it was a lot of pressure. And when I was looking into schools, I really wanted to go to Columbia and I wanted to study dance because dance has always been my thing. And like I knew like I was never academically, I don't like school. Like I was never fond of it. I didn't It just felt so intense for me all the time. And yeah, and then I found dance and I wanted to go to school and study dance. And then, you know, that's so unheard of. It's not unheard of, but for our community being first generation, like there's a lot that rides on the idea of going to school to study dance, right? Like, what are you going to do when you're done with school? That was the question I got stuck on. I was like, what am I going to do? But I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to open up a nonprofit in Chicagoland. I wanted to like offer dance classes. I wanted to, you know, do something for my community. And then somehow I let that question like, change my route. And then I went to Lewis and I started with social work. I didn't like social work, and then I changed my major to sociology. I enjoyed learning about groups and people and theory. Um, and then I didn't know what to do with my sociology degree once I was done. I was like, what do I do with this, And I started as a TA in Montessori. And then from Montessori, I went to the charter sector. And then within the charter sector, that's where I started teaching Spanish. Um, I worked in Inglewood and in Brighton Park. So if teaching's all I've ever known, right? Like out of college. And when I lost my I had established 2007. I had established Favelitos Lindos throughout that time, like in 2017, and it was something I had. It was a hobby, It was something that I knew had a lot of potential, but it was for sure a hobby. I couldn't teach and do what I'm doing. I just couldn't. Like I didn't have the capacity because teaching is exhausting, mentally, physically, emotionally draining, and that's just how I felt. And in 2019 when I lost my job, like I was devastated. I was so sad. It took such a blow to my ego. And how do you build your self-esteem after losing your job, right? And then the pandemic hit. So then it was like losing my job and then dealing with the pandemic and trying to figure out graphic design, trying to figure this out. Um, it's been a process, like a really long process. And I think this is the first year where I'm leaning into my shit. I'm like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I know why I'm doing it. And I'm going to own it, but it's taken me a long time to definitely get there. Um, because this didn't feel like feasible for me. Like how was I going to do it? How was this going to be successful? And community is how. So once I learned that, I was like, okay, I'm good.
How did you start building that community? I think like it's so easy for me too to talk about community and like really say like you need community in order for your business, your idea, your brand, you to thrive. But having community or finding the right community can be hard. So how did you start building your community around your brand?
I knew why I started Papelitos Lindos. Like I started Papelitos Lindos to create representation in stationery. There are cards that are in Spanish, but like they're literally like it's like like they're just paragraphs of words. And where where's you know where's your part? Like where's your sentiment in that? And when I saw that, I instantly knew who my community was. It's a community who chooses to express themselves. It's a community who chooses language over, who loves bold statements, who enjoys stationery, who appreciates like craftsmanship of things. Um and how I started to build all of that was through community events. Like I started, um, I don't talk about this often, but before I started, let's take a step back. Before I started Papelitos Lindos, I played with photography for a bit, and I even had a Facebook page. It was Sandra G Photography, and I mean, I know I am good at taking pictures, but there's a lot of like logistics and just there's just a lot in photography that I didn't want to figure out. Like I just want to take a good picture because I know how, and it's a lot. So my friend would have these art shows, and she would curate them, and I would show some of my photography. So like once I did pictures of Mexico, this other time I did like orchids, and I think those were my only two. And then I transitioned into stationery. So I had one of my first pop ups at her one of her events, and then from there, my first holiday pop up was at Pilsen Outpost when it was on 18th and Damon. And that day, I know I met Evelyn from Las Crafty Aunties, and I met Jackie from Jackie Arte. And like those were my first two like art or creative friends. And that's how I started to build community. Like Jackie was instantly started telling me about events, and then I met Teresa, and then like it went into just doing really great things. And yeah, community events is how I started to build my community. And Mole de Mayo, pop ups in Pilsen, like um, La Catrina, when it used to be on 18th Street. They closed it down a few years ago, but that was another one of my first Pilsen pop-ups, and that's where I met Yoli, Jasmine, and their mom from Mi Madre Lo Hizo. So like that's who I've been with at big summer events. Like we share our tents together, and just being able to like build a foundation of like your own entrepreneur creative friends, and then like off of social media, like people coming to your events and being like, oh, I follow you on Instagram. Like, that's my favorite shit to hear. Like, I love hearing that, you know? Like, you came because you saw my event? Like, what? That's so, like, it's so great. And community is beautiful and it's everything. And, like, I I know who I create for. And that's why building it was so easy because what I'm doing is intentional, and it's intentionally made for people like us. And and yeah, and just one more thing on community, like it's really funny and humbling, right? And the other day I went to go get tested for COVID, just precautions, and I'm standing there and I have the nose swab in my nose, and the girl's like, "Hey, you're from Papelitos Lindos," and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I just turned so red. Like this is so embarrassing, and it's not right because it's like normal for the times that we live in now. But I'm just like, I'm just standing here, swabbing my nose and my boogers, and she noticed me, and I was like, "Oh, that's so great!" And she's like, "I'm so sorry. You just turned so red." I was like, "Oh, that's even worse." I was like, "This was very humbling for me, just so you know." And yeah, like community is great. Like it's been so nice to build relationships, and yeah.
Oh my gosh, that story is amazing. And
Yeah.
I would probably be just as embarrassed.
I was like,
Uh,
I know, like, but no, nobody's trying to be called out with like a thing in their nose.
yeah. Oh my gosh, I would die. I would die.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that is like you have to put yourself out there in the
Mhm.
first place in order to make connections. And I'm so sad that like events were kind of canceled in 2020. And I mean, with reason, but like it's been so much harder for creatives to get out there because there's no events. And there, even if there are events, it's not the same. Um, I'm hoping that slowly, little by little, events and networking and in person meetups do continue to grow again. Um, but I think, like, even though social media is great because you can connect with people across the country, across the world, in different um, states, even to like collaborate, it's like twice as hard because you're not in person. There's something about that in person, especially in the Latinx community. Like we're always like wanting to be part of the familia and like invite people for quesadillas and menudo and like a meal to share because that in person relationship is so important and like foundational to our culture. And so I don't say that to like discourage people now uh, to not go out there, or that it's going to be that much harder. Yes, it's harder because of the state that we're in with pandemic and reality, um, but I encourage people to put that much more effort into connecting on social and then taking that offline like we did. Like we connected, formed a relationship on Instagram, and then we're like, let's meet in person. Like let's do it, let's be safe about it. It was in the summer of, was it 2021,
Mm-hmm.
I think, or spring. I think it was a little chilly.
Yeah, it was cold spring.
We Yeah. um we did it. We were both comfortable with it. We were outside, masks. So like we respected enough each other enough to be like, hey, if you're comfortable with it, let's do this safely. Um, but it was important for us to like take a relationship to the next level and like start asking deep questions. And man, every time we get together, you ask like tough questions that really make me think and like make me be vulnerable. And I think that's also what builds relationships too. So I know if you're introverted like me, like it's hard to like go out, and even if you're at an event, like it's easy to just be in your little booth, like just like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I'll wait for people to come to me. Um, but it really is so beneficial, and you'll build community so much faster if you're just willing to put yourself out there and form relationships, even if it's like doesn't develop into a necessarily a friendship where you're going out for drinks or dinner regularly, but having that person like as just a friend in the business can go like a long way.
Yeah, and it's important like to have that. And even at events, like it's not easy. Sometimes I just don't feel like talking. And that's just, how I feel. And at events, if I feel like that, it's so easy to talk about something that I love. And I think that's like the perspective of like, I don't like small talk. I want to get to know you, and I want you to get to know me. And that's why I like to ask these difficult questions, because like we don't ask each other difficult questions. And I think that if your intent is to build a relationship, a friendship, that requires connection. And in order to connect, you got to talk about things that aren't easy to talk about sometimes. And um so like within friendships, that's I love asking difficult questions. And I think in person and events, like it's so easy to connect because I create for my community. So when they see my stuff, like, and it's it's easy to talk about. And sometimes it does feel repetitive, but I'm just like, okay, how can I make myself more authentic? And how, not, or, present myself, because I am authentic, but sometimes, it can be exhausting a little bit. And yeah, so it's been a learning curve for sure in terms of like talking at events and talking with people in general. I've learned a lot so through this. So yeah.
Let's take a quick break because I'm so excited to announce it's finally happening. Join me on a guided trip to Mexico City this June as we learn about Mexican history, traditional cooking, and immerse ourselves in experiences that will cultivate thoughtful conversation about ourselves and our ancestral legacies. This is the time to pour into yourself and enjoy a meaningful and curated trip where I take care of everything in Mexico, and all you have to do is enjoy. To get all the details and apply, visit garinamora.com. Now back to our guest. I know you've talked about like what influences your work, but can you go a little deeper on the influence of like where does the influence for your designs come from?
um so a lot of the things that I've created, they're inspired by things I've heard. So like toda su tiempo. Like my dad used to say that to me when I was just in a rush to grow up. He's like every like toda su tiempo. Like that's all he had to say for me to be like, okay, slow down. And you know, that's something that we need to remind ourselves of. And like my notepads, they're extremely intentional to help you process and get through the day, from your like to-do list to like, but like first let's start with gratitude. What are you grateful for today? And like at the end of it, like when you're done checking off your list, what you've done, like what was your win for the day? Because like these 2 years have been really difficult. And if you've had one good thing happen throughout the day, like you should remind yourself of that one good thing because that's still a win. And we can get so clouded by all the things outside of our control, and that's another question that's in my notepads that my friend actually would ask us, like, what are your stressors and how much control do you have over your stressors? And like, I have friends who ask me questions like that, and I have a dad who reminds me to like slow down. And like, I have a culture who wants to be seen, and like, I have a community of women who call each other poderosa and chingonas, and they rep that shit, like, and I love that, I love that I get to create that. And that's where my inspiration comes from, is from, like, in general, my community and things that I hear and things that I see, or things that I see need to be made.
Can you take us through the evolution of your products? What was your first product that you offered?
It was for sure cards, but I used to make them. So I used to work with another graphic designer. I didn't start to do my own designs till like up until 2 years ago. I used to just hire someone to do it. And it was like a calaca, like a skeleton, and it was a card. And it was like, I made it on the Cricut, like I didn't even print it. And it had like, it kind of looked like papel picado, but I used to like, it had polka dots, and I used to hand glue all the polka dots on the card. Yeah. And then I stopped doing all that. And then I went into embossing, which is like a stamping and an inking process with heat. And you apply, like, you stamp it with like invisible ink, and then you pour a powder, and then you apply the heat with like a heat gun, and then it makes it rise. So it's really beautiful. It's a really beautiful process, and I worked with that for a while. Um, and then yeah, like I started to get my own designs made into stamps, and then I discovered foiling. So right now, all of my papelitos are like digital print or foiled cards. I only have like one embossed card. But my goal is to like, I love a process. So I love the process of embossing. I love the process of foiling, and I love the outcome, and I really want to, like, this year, one of my goals is to learn letterpress and to like um create my own screen print. And like, I love the magic and possibility of what you can do on paper. So like, I want to hone in more on handmade things. So yeah, so I'm gonna go back to my roots. I think I just wanted to establish myself a little more as a designer and a creator, and really like learn Adobe and Illustrator. And now that I feel more confident in all of that, now I'm like, okay, let me go back to what I know I love, which is a good handmade process, and not feel this like pressure of like capitalism and consumerism and like rushing, and like, because at the end of the day, my community is going to show up for me whether I need to restock or not. So I just, like, I need to slow it down in terms of my thinking. And that's what I'm trying to do.
How many products have you added since your first like launch?
I don't even know how many products I have, but I know on my website I have over 6 pages of products. Over 5 for sure. Over 5 for sure. I'll say that. Yeah. So I do have a lot. And I'm really intentional about like with the exception of Christmas, I'm really intentional of what I make, because I want to be able to carry it throughout the year. So I don't really make things that say Happy Mother's Day or Happy Father's Day or Happy Valentine's Day, because I want to keep that within my card collection.
I like that your stuff is kind of timeless. Like you can purchase at any time, um, other than like Christmas. But even so, I have to share that, and you know this, but I purchased this collection that you released over like Halloween, Day of the Dead time frame, and it was like with the little calavera
Katrina. Yeah.
Katrina heads,
Yeah.
and I got them. Like I got like the set of cards, and I told you, I'm just like, I don't want to use them. Like, I want to use them, like, frame them and put them up, because they're like, even though you know that it's for Day of the Dead, like, it's also Mexican culture, and you just want to showcase that, like, any
Yeah.
time of the year, um, which is beautiful and smart. Like, it's a smart business move as
Mhm.
well. Um, and as creatives, as creators, like, we have to wear all of the hats. Like, we have to think about all of the things, from not only just design and creating, but also like branding and marketing and
Mhm.
running your website and being able to have the processors to take the payments, and then also the scheduling of all your events and all the things. How has, or what have you learned through that process of having to kind of figure it out and do all the things?
Right now, I feel like I'm in the baby stage of my business where I'm learning all the things I don't want to do. And um, I say that because, like, I still feel burnt out from Christmas. I did 4 events. I don't know who I thought I was. I did 4 events. Almost every weekend I had an event. And um, I created 9 designs, which was I just I didn't limit myself with the collection because I didn't want to. Like, I felt like I had more to give and I just wanted to keep going. And now it's like Valentine's Day and Galentine's Day. I'm just like, I won't do that again because I should have saved some of that creative juice for this collection. And it's just learning, constantly learning. So when I say that, like, I mean, I'm just always figuring it out. And sometimes I still don't know what I'm doing. And I'm really grateful to have like friends in the field and to also like be able to put myself in positions to just learn and ask questions and apply and do, because I don't know. I say this all the time, but like this is hard. This isn't easy and you have so much to learn all the time. And I just want to create. I don't want to do anything else. I just want to make things. I just want to design and I can't because my attention has to be in so many other places. And I struggle with that still. Um Creating balance. I haven't mastered it yet. But yeah.
Girl, you know I haven't mastered that either. I mean, I think it gets to a point in your business, especially if you're just starting out, like, you have this excitement and you want to do everything. You want to do all the things, especially when you see growth. And you get to that point where you realize you are burned out and you have to start asking for help. And even if it's just like hiring someone to do the packaging, or someone to design a logo or do your social media. Um, and it's so hard because in order to afford those things, you have to work to get money to afford those things. And so, to any creative that is struggling, like, you're not alone. And I think that's why community is so important, because you can talk about these things and know that you're not alone, that it is hard, and it's not like you're not failing because you're tired or burned out. You just need some help, and you need encouragement, and you need to get together with your other entrepreneur friends and not talk about business for a little bit, which is something that, like, we started doing with another friend of ours, Veronica. She was also on the podcast season 1. Veronica is a photographer, and I forget who initiated it, but we like all connected, and someone was just like, we need to hang out and just have like a jefa dinner. And I'm just like, okay, let's do it. And yeah, we did talk a little bit about business, but it was super like chill. That's where we started getting to know each other. on a deeper level. Uh, and I think that's also so necessary to have entrepreneur friends that can get you, know your struggles, but also make, like, you have to be intentional about making time to just check in on each other in real, like, about real life. Um, so thank you so much for being honest. Sometimes that, like, that's the stuff you don't hear or see on social media. And I think it can be hard for someone who doesn't know or is just starting to know that that's reality, and that sometimes that happens. Burnout happens, but that's where you can reevaluate and grow in grow yourself and grow your company.
Yeah. And like you learn because I already know this time next year I'm not going to feel like this because I'm going to have Valentine's Day done before the end of my Christmas launch. Like that's, I'm learning how to plan things out, and it's just constantly learning, and it's working through the this isn't enough. Like that's like self-sabotaging thoughts, and like I don't like I go through it, but I have to work through it because I don't. Just yesterday, I was telling my friend like how tired I felt, and she's like, "But you've done so much. Like you realize like it's okay for you to be this tired because look at what you've done." And I'm just like, "Yeah, but I went on like a 3 week break, and I'm still tired, And I'm just like, okay, it's, you know, I cleaned my office today. I don't care to show the messy parts of like like my office because it is a disaster sometimes. Like I haven't worked in here since before Christmas. And and it was just an explosion of things. And like I love sharing that in my stories because it's like this is real life. I'm a mess. My office is a mess, and watch me clean. And yeah, I just it is a messy process, but literally one thing at a time. So
I I want to give a shout out to us as collaborators.
yeah.
We collaborated on a project and it launched like for the holidays, which, I mean, we learned a lot. We learned what not to
Yeah.
do. We learned a lot. But this was
Yeah.
like my first like collaboration with another creator. Like I've collaborated as in like, oh, let's host this thing together. Let's go live together. Let's like
Mm-hmm.
work on this podcast together. But this was like we were creating something from scratch, like from an idea that I had, and I was like, will you do this with me? And like I think I knew that it was going to be a lot, but we should have given ourselves more time. Um,
And the thing is too, like, I also feel like we did, but the creative process is also really difficult for me because I can't like sit down and be like, oh, I'm gonna create something. I have to be in the mood and have to be ready. So like, I think it took me a minute to visualize what I wanted the like layout to look like, and then to have something like presentable for you, like, okay, this is like, and I don't know, it is great. I'm looking at it now, it's right in front of me. It's some of my best work, I think. It's so clean, yeah. It's so clean and so pretty, and you know yeah, the way we complemented each other so well on this project, it's great.
so I'll share from my part, from my side, what I was thinking. Like it was a lot of vulnerability for me to share my work with someone
Mm-hmm.
and to kind of give creative freedom to you. Like I knew that I loved your work and I trusted you as a friend and as a designer. But there's something when you're handing over your work and saying like, okay, do something with this. Can you find inspiration in this work? That is a little like it triggered anxiety. And there were a lot of times where I had to like let you do your job because that's why I wanted to work with you.
Yeah.
Um, and I think as we work together to create the calendar, if anyone doesn't know, we created a calendar for 2022. And I think I also am not one to give negative feedback. And so it was also nerve wracking for me to be like, Ma, I think we should do this. Or I think, like, can we see it like this way? Because I didn't want you to feel like it wasn't good. Or
Hmm.
I wanted this. And I think that's why, like, we worked so well together. Because at one point, you're just like, no, you just need to tell me what's wrong. Because I need to just fix it. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I need to start, like, get over myself and, like, just be direct. Like, we needed to trust each other enough to be direct about, like, you saying, no, that's not going to work because of this and because of dimensions. And I would say, like, okay, well, this is off and this is off. And I stopped. It's like when you, it's like that corporate email when you see it's like that video where you have like the nice email and you're like, if you have some time, like, no, get rid of, if you have some time, just be direct. Can you do this?
Yeah.
Yes or no? Signed, whatever. Um, but I think also because we had developed that relationship first and that trust and that friendship, like we knew that we had each other's best interest in mind and we both wanted this to succeed, and so we didn't take things personally um,
Yeah. Because
as
it
it went
wasn't
on.
personal. Yeah, it was
Right.
business, and that's really important when collaborating. Like, luckily, lucky enough we're friends and we have that, relationship and that comfort. And yeah, it was a process for sure.
Yes, but it was beautiful. Like I love it. Like I love this end product. I think um, it showcases both of our brands so
Mhm.
well, and I think that's also an important thing when you're collaborating to like showcase so that people when they see it they know that um, it represents both brands if it's a true collaboration, because you could collaborate with someone and say like, okay, I'm going to pay you to do this, and
Mhm.
it's my work or my design, and that's like you're hiring someone and that's kind of a collaboration, but it's not like you both are have like 50-50.
That's exactly what we did. I think that, like, I felt overwhelmed in the beginning with the creative freedom because it's like, what do I do with this? Where do I even start? And I think what I was really excited about is that you liked the typefaces and the overall concept right off the bat. You know, it was, and that made me feel like, okay, because we didn't change anything design wise, like initially, like, which is so good. I think throughout, like, revisions, we had to change a few things, but like overall, it's perfect. It's so beautiful, and it elevates our cultura, and it elevates our brands, and it's such a beautiful project, and I'm so happy to have made it, and I can't wait for next year. Next year, we already know it's going to be better, and we learned so much this first time.
Yes, oh my gosh, and we're gonna start like 2 months ahead of time
Yeah, it'll be ready by November.
for sure. um Yeah, and I think that's also another uh, advice that I would give, that when you are collaborating on this level with someone, like you have to make sure that your brands are in line with the message, because your brand is built on making sure that your culture comes through in the stationery industry. And my brand is focused on the images that are showcasing Mexico so that we can elevate Mexican culture and Mexico like visually. And so I think that's why this collaboration worked so well and was so receptive with both of our audiences, because it was like the foundation of our creating this was the same. Like our why was the same.
Yeah. And I don't think I told you this, but I showed when we like first had our first sets ready to go, I showed my dad. And my dad's like a man of few words, right? Like I'll take any whenever I like finish a collection, I'll take it to my parents' house, like present it. And I showed this to my dad, and he like the way he looked at it. I was just watching him, and like he was just taking it all in. He's like, "This is really beautiful." He's like, "Just the quality of it is so nice. Like this feels expensive." And I was just like, "That's so nice of you. Like that's the most you've ever said about anything that I've ever made." But like even then, like it just felt so good to like see him go through the pictures and be like, "Oh, this is a part of this town," and then tell me something else about like a town close by, and like to be able to make that connection with my dad, it was really special. Because it resonated with him. So,
Mm,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. Thank you
Yeah, I don't think I
for
told you, but
sharing
yeah.
that. Ah, that makes me happy.
Hmm.
That makes me happy. Um, all right, so I want to ask you some vulnerable questions since you are so good at asking me vulnerable questions. Um, as a first gen Latina, what were some past ideas or patterns or limiting beliefs that you've had to work through to get to where you're at now?
I think one of them was definitely that you can't make money in anything creative. Because you can. You can create your own lifestyle. You just have to build it, and that's not easy. Um, I think something I really struggled with was like just building the confidence that I needed in general to do what I'm doing, and like a lot of that just was based off of like personal experiences that led into just my business, and just figuring it out is like so messy. Like I've been a mess the last 2 years. Like I have it together, but like I'm also low key a mess on the side because I'm just like what, like scrambling sometimes, and that might not ever feel different, but you'll always feel a little more confident, as you go. Um, and like limiting beliefs is like you can, you can do it. Just do it, and it's not easy. Like they always say it's always easy, like easier said than done. Absolutely. But once you get to the point of like I'm gonna do it, I can do it, you're gonna do it. And that's just kind of where I'm at. But like all of like it took for me to go through a lot to get to here. Like I had to take a look back on me and my shit, and like what makes me so insecure about what I'm doing. Like I shouldn't feel this way because I'm seeing results, and yeah, and like I don't know, sometimes like as a creative, I think in general creatives are just really critical of themselves and their process, and like it doesn't ever feel like enough. But it is, and like it's really hard to kind of create a balance in between expectations that you have of yourself and the reality of the world that we're living in, because it's been 2 years into this, and it's been really hard, you know? And I've just really learned to give myself a lot of grace because I'm literally doing the best that I can. Um, and that's not easy either. But and I realize that I say that all the time, that like this is the hardest thing I've ever done, but like it is, like it's great, it's amazing, it's terrifying, it's fulfilling, it's satisfying and unsatisfying at the same time. Like I can't I, it's like 60-40, 60% of the time you're going to probably feel either really good or really bad, because you're going to have that other 40% that's like telling you you're doing great or telling you it's not enough, and working through that. And like, I go to therapy. Like, going to therapy has been the best decision I've ever made for myself. I've been working with my therapist for like 3 years now. And it's so self validating. Like, and, you know, oftentimes we're made to feel a certain way because of our cultura, because of our gender, because of our expectations, because of society, because of so many things. And like, there's just layers on top of layers. And once you start to peel them off, like, it's on, and you're not alone. And no one should ever do this alone. I know that therapy isn't within everyone's means, but if you can, if you can get a therapist. If whatever it is that you're trying to do, because a lot of the things that like eat at us are kind of just ingrained in us through our experiences and through our trauma and through and that those are things you just got to work through. We can't avoid our problems or the things that we never gave ourselves the space to feel.
Yes, and if you listen to season 2, for the listeners, it was on health and wellness, and I did interview a therapist. Her name was Patti, and she gives a lot of resources on where to find therapists that are Latinx. That if you wanted to really dive in to um, being able to connect with someone who understands your culture. I think that's a great resource that she has on that podcast. And you can also find therapists that take your insurance or offer a sliding scale. So I just want to put that shout out on there. Season 2, her name is Patti. So there's only 10 episodes per season. So she should be easy to find. And then lastly, what encouragement or advice would you give to the next generation?
So earlier, I want to take a step back. Earlier, we were talking about like how much pressure rides on like kids to figure out their lives and to, make really big financial decisions and still be unsure. And it's totally okay to be unsure. It's totally okay to take your time to figure it out. Like, there's no rush. Like, what's the rush? I think that we have these timelines for ourselves, and instead of them encouraging us, I think if any, it freezes a lot of people. Like, I didn't know what to do. I graduated a year late. I wasn't taking my studies seriously. Like, but I had this, I felt this pressure of like having to go to school and having to have that degree. Um, and I don't know. I was talking to my goddaughter the other day where she just turned 18, and we were talking about like college. She's like, I've lost 2 years of school. Like, I'm a sophomore making senior decisions and I can't. And I'm like, and that's okay. Like, you can't, and it's okay. Like, take your time. Like, this is such a huge financial responsibility. You don't need to put yourself in a difficult position or situation right now, and just figure it out. And that's all I can really say on that, is like, just take the time to figure out what makes you happy. And it's not easy. It's not going to be something that you realize, it might be years down the line, but like, expose yourself to things that intrigue you, that make you curious, that you find interesting, and just keep going for it, because this is the only life we get. So, like, to live life and not be happy doing something that takes up a lot of your time, like, I don't want to live like that. I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't want to live like that. So like I love to see the like agency that people are creating for themselves since this whole thing happened. Like so many people have quit their jobs. So many people are like fuck capitalism, fuck all this, and great. I love to see it, and I love to see the people doing what makes them happy. And I think at the end of the day, that's all we can do is just try to figure out what makes us happy. Yeah.
That's such a perfect way to end the podcast. Such good advice. I feel like it's so simple, but so necessary for us to hear this every day, and to be reminded of just do what makes you happy.
Yeah.
All right, where can people find you? Share your website, social media handles, everywhere.
Yes. So my website, I have my own website. It's papelitoslindos.com. You can find me on Instagram at papelitoslindos, Facebook as well. I'm more active on Instagram for sure. That's where you'll see me cleaning in my stories and my office manager. Um, but yeah, those that's where you could find me. And right now I'm not doing any events. I might have an event in March for my 4-year anniversary. I haven't decided yet. Just because COVID ruins everything. But yeah, those are something to definitely look out for is my anniversary party. If it's happening. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your friendship. I appreciate your time and your willingness to share your story on the podcast. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for loving me and answering my questions and being like, I don't know. But let me tell you. Yeah.
Yeah, you really get me thinking, which is good.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, we will talk later.
Yes.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. If you haven't already, check out all of Papelitos Lindos designs and send her a happy anniversary on Instagram. I'm so glad to have her as a friend who inspires me and helps me think deeper about business and life in general. Okay, amigos, thank you so much for listening. There'll be a new episode every Tuesday, so after you listen, feel free to take a screenshot to post on Instagram and tag at Elevating La Cultura or send me a DM. You can also comment on our YouTube video if you're watching online. I always like to hear from people and how they resonate with the stories that I share. So leave a review on Apple Podcasts so we can get more ears listening to these stories and we can continue elevating La Cultura. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening, y nos vemos next week. Bye.